Nintendo in 2017. Need I say more? Yeah, so Nintendo came into the Switch era definitely swinging. It was a pretty hard turn from where we were the previous year, where the Wii U was kind of getting a lot of scraps. Um, Paper Mario Color Splash. The point was, after a big drought, Nintendo kind of finally showed us in that Switch 2017 trailer that they would be back and come back with a vengeance. They did. 2017 is often regarded as one of the best years the console ever saw. And that was its first year, which is insane and also amazing. Things were just so much more different. These consoles were insanely hard to find for almost half the year until like September after their release in March. And the games just kept coming and coming and coming. Nintendo was really smart and had basically a major release for almost every single month of the year. In the months where they didn't, they oftentimes had really large tentpole third-party releases cover their time. I think May had Minecraft, and then like maybe there was something in September, but other than that, just every single month was something new. You always had something to play on this thing. Every month, Nintendo made sure you were gonna use your new console. And it was awesome. So today, I thought it would be a good idea to go over all of the games released in 2017 and just kind of go over my thoughts on each one, talk about some of the reception of it overall, and, just get into it. So, let's go ahead and get started. Nintendo, of course, was also keen to get started, and they launched this console with a launch game that really revolutionized both, Nintendo's output as a whole and the industry, showing off that this tech was here to stay, and it was insane having a game this crazy on a console like this. Yeah, I bet you've never seen anybody make a joke like this before. So, 1-2 Switch was the launch title for the Nintendo Switch, the only exclusive launch title from Nintendo directly. I believe Super Bomberman R was also exclusive to the Switch for a while. I'm not sure if that ever launched off it or just the sequel. But this was our launch title directly from Nintendo that we did not know about or was exclusively built for this console. And that's very obvious. All of the games, as these wonderful people and gorillas and whatever, aren't really built around like actually looking at the screen itself, and are rather built around using the Joy-Cons on their own to emulate different systems. The Joy-Cons were a new controller that they wanted to show off how much amazing tech they packed into it. They had the sandwich eating minigame, where you had to eat the sandwiches using the IR camera. They had the marble guessing minigame, where you roll it around and you can kind of feel the marbles in it with the power of HD Rumble. Very much a tech demo, and I don't think it's awful, I guess. I've played it like a couple of times in a party setting-ish. It wasn't bad. I don't think I had a bad time, but it's definitely one of those things where you go through like the 5 mini games out of the 30 included, and you're like, yeah, those are the ones I like. I'll play those like twice, and then we're switching to something that's actually sustainable for more than like 15 minutes. And that's the major problem with 1-2 Switch is it's a cool tech demo. It's not a $50 game, which is how much this poor game retailed for. It was $50, I believe, at the time, which is way too much. Even like $30 or $20 probably would have been too much of an asking point. This definitely should have been a pack-in. It doesn't really exude like Nintendo charm, I guess, just because it has this weird like obsession with live action people and stuff. So I guess I understand why it's not ever going to be as revered heavily as like something like Nintendo Land or Wii Sports ever was. So they didn't pack it in because it doesn't really represent the company, but it's also this weird project, and it's 1-2 Switch. It's not awful, but it was the first game we got. In fact, it was the first game at the Switch presentation showcase kind of showing off for the console, and they were like, yeah, look at what our controller can do. And I remember even then, like, people were kind of weirded out by the obsession with real people instead of showing us cool game, cool graphics. And that was 1-2 Switch, I guess. Great. Let's talk about a real launch title. All right, here's the real, like, big launch game that we got. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Just thinking about the build-up to release for this game was just insane. Zelda Wii U was, of course, shown off at a E3, I think, previously in 2013 or 2014. Put it up, editor egg, right there. That, probably not up there, probably maybe down here, I don't know. But we finally got a glimpse at our big next-gen Zelda game. It was this crazy open-world experience. Everybody was super excited to experience it. We would get it on the Wii U. And then nothing. Until, like, the Game Awards, where I think 2015 Game Awards, we got a small glimpse at some gameplay. Maybe 2014. I don't know. It was early. We got a small glimpse at some old early Zelda gameplay. We saw, like, I think a beta version of the Parasol and, like, putting down markers using the first-person mode. And then we got to, like, the big thing that Aonuma and Miyamoto were excited to show off was that the horses didn't bump into trees. Great. And then, finally, after another long wait, in 2016, we got our dedicated E3, only to Breath of the Wild. Whoa. This game, like, out of the gate, I think everybody kind of knew it was going to be really special, this weird experience. Just watching footage of people playing on the Great Plateau in that E3 was kind of enlightening, and it was very obvious what all of the appeals of the game was, because when you were watching, you saw them go places, and you're like, oh my god, what happens when you go there? What happens when you go there? And so, I think the writing, like, everybody knew that Zelda Breath of the Wild was going to be a game changer already by then. But then, of course, a couple months later, we got the news that Breath of the Wild would be coming alongside the Wii U on the Switch. And so, realistically, if you're gonna buy a brand new console, you're probably gonna buy the new Zelda game with it. I don't know how well the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild sold. I don't think it did poorly, but it was very obvious that Nintendo wanted you experiencing this game on here. They had removed any Wii U functionality that ever was there. Everything kind of functions only on this console. And wow, having a game this large on a console this small was the ultimate sales pitch for the Switch. I think it super quickly proved that a concept like this, a console that might only be as powerful as a Wii U, but it can carry all of the power of a Wii U, would work. People love this game. So many people I know that don't game that much, or people that weren't into gaming before this came out, picked up Breath of the Wild and have played it. This is a magical experience. Right now, in 2025, when I'm recording this, we're kind of in our hater arc for a Zelda game. It's kind of the cycle that every Zelda game goes through, where, oh, now I don't like this one because it's not like the old ones, or it didn't do this one specific thing I was expecting from it. But I don't think that should stop this game's praises from being sung enough. It just works super well. The open world always feels engaging, even when you're just standing there, because of the ambient cel-shaded style. The story was a little, like, lackluster, I guess, compared to other Zeldas. I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I think it was a lot less front and center, so it's kind of harder to get invested in it. And of course, it's really just watching like 10 cutscenes that are completely optional and then beating the game, which is another thing like half the people who play this don't do. I know a lot of people over the years who have told me, yeah, I loved Breath of the Wild. I never beat it though, which I think just stands to show how amazing it was. People kept playing this because they didn't want it to end, and I don't really blame them because it was fantastic. And but back to that story, it wasn't front and center, but I still think it was really powerful and it left a mark. Zelda, from this game, I see more art of everywhere, like on the internet, than any other generation of Zelda. The blue has stuck around. I don't think we're ever going to lose the blue over the green now, and it's just crazy. This game is amazing, and it totally deserved all of the awards and recognition it got in 2017. And I think it still receives. I think it still deserves so much of the praise that it gets. And while I am a little worried about the future of Zelda after Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which I'll talk about in another video, I still think this foundation is super strong, and it's very obvious that there's still so many different things you can build on top of it. A new world, different kind of Sheikah Slate abilities. There's infinite ways to customize a sandbox. It's the reason that Gary's mod still gets consistent mods and updates, and people still play that to this day. While a game like this isn't like as flexible as that, I think a baseline like this is, and yeah, they did a fantastic job, and Breath of the Wild was really, really special. But that's not the only two launch games we got directly from Nintendo, technically. Nintendo published one other title onto the Switch when it launched, and it was kind of nice to have. It was the last showcase of the console, where Zelda existed to showcase how great having this powerful handheld with you was, and 1-2 Switch existed to showcase the controllers. We, of course, had our last game to showcase the power of the couch co-op nature of the Switch, which was crazy considering we were in a time where gaming was trying to move into the online direction. Snipperclips, cut it out together. This is one of my favorite little showcases of the Switch's kind of nature to bring people together. Of course, right now I have Plus, the DLC that came out later in 2017, added extra levels, I think you could play it with 4 players instead of just 2. But I think this was a great kind of one more launch thing. It had a playable demo, and I never actually owned the full version, but just having the demo and playing the demo with another person, either in the hallways when I was in high school, whatever. It was just a great way to show off, hey, I can take both of these off and play a fun game together very easily. I don't think there's too much to say on Snipperclips necessarily. It's a fun concept. The sketchbook kind of area is really cool. I think it's kind of the last hurrah of Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, like eShop exclusives. They don't do a lot of like wacky new IP on those shops anymore, or I guess the one shop we have now. And Snipperclips was kind of the last example of that. But regardless, it was a really great little game. But yeah, Snipperclips is great. There's not too much to say on it other than it's fun. It's a small little DLC game. Pretty good. I think our launch lineup for the Switch was strong enough to definitely carry it all the way till April before we got our next big game. And honestly, by then, we could already tell that the Switch was... everything was going to be okay. We were out of our Wii U rut, and judging by the fact that the console couldn't be found anywhere, people were loving Breath of the Wild, people were playing 1-2 Switch, I guess, and people were liking Snipperclips. It was a pretty good launch, and of course, it just kept getting better with the next launch of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the game that just will not stop selling. This came out in April of 2017 on the 28th. Personally, I remember being sick and asking my parents to pick me up this copy, so I do technically have a launch date copy. Very important fun fact. But yeah, this game was kind of revealed really weird, actually, when we first saw it, where the first time we ever got a glimpse of this was, of course, back in that October of 2017 Switch trailer, where we kind of just saw a glimpse of gameplay of 2 people just kind of playing it in handheld mode. But the gameplay was very obviously a little bit different from Mario Kart 8. It featured King Boo, who was not in the original Mario Kart 8, had the 2 item boxes, and like I think a couple of other things. And then we wouldn't hear about this game again until the Switch 2017 presentation, but it wasn't actually formally announced there. It was used as a kind of placeholder for any footage whenever they were talking about the Switch. They would always show somebody playing Mario Kart on it, but they still wouldn't tell us what the game was. And then, of course, once the presentation actually wrapped up, Nintendo just kind of dropped the trailer for it. Really weird way to reveal that this big game that was already a pretty big deal on the Wii U onto the Switch. I've heard there's more recent interviews that just came out that this game was kind of like yeah, screw it, just kind of put it out the door, get Mario Kart in people's hands. And it's really funny looking back on that now, because I think that makes this make way more sense, with the only real major change that came to this version was the battle mode, showed off in both that big trailer that they finally did eventually upload, and of course is kind of the advertised thing on the back of the box here. We've got a battle mode, and it's pretty cool. I think it's better. I know there's the new mode, Renegade Roundup, that is cops and robbers. I don't think it works all that great. Realistically, personally, I've never been a big battle mode person. I always turn on Mario Kart for the racing. That's probably because I grew up in the Wii era, where that was after battle mode had ever started, like, battle mode wasn't great by then. So realistically, I never really understood the appeal of battle mode, so getting all of these battle mode reworks and focuses wasn't really a big deal to me. In addition to that, all of the battle mode courses are basically just remixes of existing courses in the game. You don't go anywhere new. So it never felt super fresh to me, nor did I ever really want to play it. I really like Shine Runners, but that's the only one that I'd ever, I think, even remotely suggest one of my friends to play with me. But that being said, there was actually one new map, which was, of course, the Splatoon map. The additions for this game were some new playable characters, including Splatoon characters, and it kind of started becoming less of Mario Kart and more Nintendo Kart, which is really cool and is a great idea that I think should be continued to be explored in the future. And in addition to that, the game is still fantastic. I like this one way better than the Wii U version personally. Not because of performance and stuff, that stuff generally doesn't matter to me, but I really like the rebalance. I like that there's more items in play at any given time. The one item that the Wii U version had might have been like it was fine, but I like it when it's more chaotic. I like my Mario Kart stupid. I want to get really angry at it and enjoy getting angry at it. King Boo is also my favorite Mario Kart character, so having him back was a delightful surprise. And again, I guess the battle tracks give it extra points. And then also, this game just never stopped selling. Everybody has Mario Kart 8. It's crazy that this is the game that's like never stopping selling. And it's also kind of nice because this is such a multiplayer game. It's very easy to meet a lot of people online, in person, and say, hey, you want to play Mario Kart? And it's instantly understood that it's probably going to be this version. Play it online, whatever. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is fantastic. But of course, with the release of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, everybody was asking, hey, are we going to get any new tracks? Not in 2017, I can tell you that much. We'll check back again next year. Oh boy. And as a quick little break from games in general, around this time of year, after the release of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we had our lull of May, which, to be fair, I think actually Minecraft released in May for the Switch, which was another big get for a console like this, where Minecraft took forever to get to the Wii U. It's finally here. Great. We love our Minecraft. But right after Minecraft, of course, was E3 2017. And going into E3 in general is always very exciting, or I guess was always very exciting, rest in peace. But this E3, of course, was highlighted with a new console reveal. We got the reveal of several games, Mario and Rabbids, but more importantly, it was kind of detailing games that we already knew about further into the year. Xenoblade 2, and of course, Super Mario Odyssey were the big ones that I can remember off the top of my head. It was a good E3. I think realistically, if you go back and watch it, it's not all that exciting because there weren't a lot of reveals other than Metroid Prime 4, but as I'm recording this, that still isn't out. So, okay, I guess. But the other big reveals, of course, were Kirby and Yoshi at the time, which I think were important, actually, because it kind of showed that Nintendo, yeah, we're going to keep our momentum going into the next year. Of course, that being said, the new Kirby's title, Star Allies, as we knew it after that E3, because we didn't get a title at the time, and same with Yoshi, Yoshi's Crafted World. Both of those titles would have issues of their own. Yoshi, I don't think, would even arrive in the promised 2018, and we'd instead get it in 2019. But at the time, it was reassuring knowing that, yeah, the Switch is going to keep marching on, and of course, we were in June by then, 3 months out from the console's launch. Things were swell. And just to amplify that swellness, we got a big ol' game. ARMS. This was a cool little kind of big event for Nintendo. When the Switch was revealed, of course, we had 2 games revealed for the highlight of the Joy-Con's power. Those games were, of course, 1-2 Switch and ARMS. And ARMS was very clearly the one that stuck out more. While 1-2 Switch kind of didn't have its own identity other than the fact that it was the Joy-Cons, kind of, ARMS very clearly had this world that they wanted to talk about. Oh, look at all of these goofy fighters that were fighting with extendable arms. all of them are going off on each other, fighting, use the Joy-Cons for the... Yeah, that. It was really cool. It was just this different new IP, and I think Nintendo knew that, and their last new IP was Splatoon, which was their kind of one grand big slam on the Wii U that is kind of stuck around, obviously, to this day, with Nintendo being a very tentpole pillar of IP for the company in general. So they were very obviously going for that again with ARMS, where they had a dedicated ARMS Direct with a kind of stylized announcer character to talk about all of the custom systems. We had Splatfests. Well, not Splatfests. We had Party Crashes, which were all about representing your favorite character in the game or whatever. And then, of course, the game also received free updates over the years, where we got more characters, more story, developments. But that kind of leads me into my main criticism with the game, where ARM's big issue was always just that, I don't think it was ever that fun to watch as a fighting game. It's very engineered as a fighting game, obviously, but when you watch a fighting game, it's very fast, it's almost rhythmic, where you hit, you see somebody go oh, they caught you in the combo, hit, 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 whoa, that's crazy. But ARMS is very turn-based, almost, where you are waiting for your arm to literally cross the arena and get the kill. So already, as an esport or a actual fighting game, I think ARMS was not that fun to watch, which is a shame because a lot of the ways that people are drawn into fighting games is by seeing other people playing it, getting impressed, watching people get excited over certain plays. I think the gameplay could totally hold up in that way, but that's how you get your super competitive people into it. But the problem is they still built it like a fighting game, where there's a campaign-ish, and there's no, really great story thing to work through. It's like a typical fighting game where you kind of just go before a match in the Grand Prix story mode. It's kind of just two people being whoa, I'm gonna get you. No, I'm gonna get you. Fight. There's a little bit of story here with, Dr. Helix, who, hey, there she is right now. She's, up to no good and engineering something. There's the headlock. There's cool stuff in the background of this game happening, but none of it ever really, I think, came together in the way that Splatoon came together very quickly for a lot of the audience of that game. And I think that's realistically why we didn't see a whole lot more ARMS later in the Switch's life cycle. That being said, I still think it's a really cool game and a really cool concept that I'd love to see extended on in the future. I don't know if I expect that. I don't really know what you do with it other than fighting game, but it was a fun new IP, and it showed that Nintendo was still cooking new things. Would they keep cooking new things into the new era? Not as much. I think this is pretty much the only new IP we're gonna see for a really long time. But for what it was, I still really liked it, and I hope Nintendo gets a little bit more experimental again here in the future. But for now, ARMS, it's a pretty good time. It's pretty good time. I don't know. I can't think of a stretching pun. Hand. Good. Yes, good arm. Yeah, great. Wait a minute, we already talked about Zelda. We're gonna talk about a lot of Zelda. So ARMS released on June 17th, which was shortly after E3, but maybe you weren't an ARMS guy, maybe you didn't like fighting games for any of the reasons that I listed earlier. But luckily, we actually got Zelda DLC, which was still kind of new for Nintendo. Mario Kart DLC had happened on the Wii U, but this was kind of our first major release, single-player release primarily, too, that was a DLC. And for the first pack of the DLC, and we knew we were getting an additional one later that year, we got the Master Trials, which kind of the big gimmick of this one was the Master Trials themselves, where you would visit the Great Deku Tree. He'd send you inside the Master Sword or some I don't really know the lore, but the whole gimmick was that you'd start from zero and continue to gather things and do all of these trials that the game had in order to permanently increase the power of the Master Sword. It was a cool little thing, and then in addition to that, we got some other kind of optional enhancements where we got some masks that help things out. I think Majora's Mask was in this pack along with the Deku Mask, which one would help you find, Deku Leaves? Trials? The Deku guys. Deku Scrubs. There it is. It'd help you find them, and then, of course, you'd also have Majora's Mask, which would hide you from enemies, which was technically a thing you could do in the game already, but this one worked for everything. Whatever. It was fun, like, fan service-y kind of goodies. And then we also got the Master Mode, which is just a harder version of the game if you want to start a new playthrough. That gives enemies, like, some health regeneration, they do more damage. All of the usual kind of, like, screw you, torture yourself, but also have fun, I guess. This was fine. I think a lot of the stuff that came with this DLC pack in particular kind of really only help to enhance an ongoing playthrough. I know that's silly to say considering Master Mode is technically a new playthrough, and that doesn't appeal as much there, but realistically, you're not going to start a new game, I think, yet, because we still had more stuff that we were playing. ARMS had just come out, and then the Master Trials was something that you could kind of knock out. I've never actually done it. I think it's really hard, and I'm the worst gamer ever, but I don't think this pack really served to show, like, wow, new DLC, which is fine. I think, actually, when it got announced, we always knew that this first pack was going to be more of this nature, more side content. The thing that people were really looking forward to was the second pack, which all we really knew about it was more story content. And with a game like this, where everybody hates the story, and yet they can't seem to get enough of it, that was the thing to look forward to. But hey, it still got people playing more of this fantastic game. Cool. I think it set a weird precedent when it comes to DLC for single-player games, which Nintendo hasn't really followed, but they haven't really done paid DLC. We'll see how they change from there. But overall, DLC Pack 1 is acceptable. Splatoon 2. Oh, it did 2. This was cool. The reveal of it was very kind of self-congratulatory. Splatoon was the one IP, the one thing that came from the Wii U that everybody really, really liked. This game had a super strong sense of style. Its art style was super defined. You could still see people making fan art in that style. It had a crazy soundtrack that was super unique compared to, like, anything Nintendo had done before, kind of going for more of a grunge, rocky direction, even if the vocals could get kind of, like, gargle-y. Yeah. But Splatoon was kind of the big victory on the Wii U, and so it was kind of obvious when we eventually saw Splatoon show up in the Switch 2016 trailer that, yeah, of course we're going to get Splatoon on the Switch, but how are we going to get it? Are we going to get a port? Are we going to get an enhanced thing? Because Splatoon had only received 2 years of updates, came out in 2015. That was only, 2 years ago compared to 2017. So what's going to happen? We're going to get a full sequel, apparently. This was kind of a surprise, I think, during the Switch presentation, where it was like, wow, this is a full sequel. It's got a new story, and kind of new reworked things. But who are we kidding ourselves? This was still Splatoon at the end of the day. The gameplay was with, like, minor enhancements, all new supers, some different changes to the weapons, some new weapons and stuff. It really did feel, to me, like it was the reality where Splatoon got another update after, like, they stopped doing updates after the final Splatfest for Splatoon 1. The core game was the same, but it was still awesome because we got new maps and new stuff. But Nintendo did release it in a state where it was kind of just weird. The story mode was good, but it was a retread of Splatoon 1 story mode where it was basically the same thing with a little bit of a interesting plot thanks to the events of Splatoon 1 affecting the story mode in Splatoon 2. And then, in addition to that, we got our wave-based mode, which was really cool. Everybody loved Salmon Run. I think Salmon Run was an amazing addition that kind of felt right at home. Too bad it was only available at limited times for whatever reason. I don't know why they did that. Like, server space? That was such a weird decision, trying to make it, like, more special so the player counts would still be high. Maybe they were worried there wouldn't be enough people playing to get, like, a full lobby together. I have no idea, but Salmon Run's better now, where it's kind of available always, especially in the sequel to this game. But that was fixed over time, and this game, of course, did get updates, where we went from, like, a pool of 6 or 5 maps to a pretty meaty, bigger pool eventually, even just over 2017, before we got anything big the following year. Splatoon 2, to me, was like Nintendo saying, Alright, Splatoon, alright, kid. You know, let's give you a real shot to shine somewhere where you can thrive. And I think it's awesome that it did. This is probably my favorite version of Splatoon, just because it felt like the devs were still doing kind of everything they could. Here specifically, Splatoon 3 is still fantastic. I'll go over it in a later video when we get there. But for now, Splatoon 2, it's pretty fresh. Mario and Rabbids. Kingdom Battle. This was released August 29th, just a month after Splatoon. So again, we're still keeping our sweet Switch output of approximately 1 game per month, where we basically still had something new to play. And while this was only developed by Ubisoft, it still had Mario on the cover, and it was very obvious Nintendo was very involved in the development of it, both in like kind of the way they promoted it and the way it feels. It's a very polished game, especially from this company that makes some interesting open world decisions at times. But this game's poor reveal was kind of like this awful perfect storm that worked both in its favor and against it. Way back during the lead up to the Switch 2017 presentation in particular, a lot of big name leakers were kind of saying like, yeah, there's going to be a Mario and Rabbids game. And the Rabbids like reputation at the time was in the gutter. I don't think anybody like, I think people like to hate on the Rabbids because they kind of like, they're kind of built to be hateable. I think they always were built to be hateable. They're the main antagonist in those old Rayman games where they were first introduced, but they're just goofy enough that they became this whole popular thing. Supposedly, I don't know how many people were actually like freaking out about Rabbids at the time, but we didn't have a lot of Rabbids content for a really long time other than like a TV show, and so their reputation was still pretty bad at the time. So hearing leaks of a Mario and Rabbids game, everybody's like, oh no, the Switch is gonna fail, it's over, if this is their big thing. But I think like another month later, or 2 months later, we actually got to see a internal document get leaked, which was kind of funny, because I remember the internal document saying badass, which Nintendo, no swearing, they're perfect, they would never allow something like that. So it was kind of goofy reading that on a internal document describing a Mario game. But it showed off some like cool like artwork of Mario and company wielding weapons, and kind of like started putting things more into perspective, that this was going to be a different type of game in general. It's not like a mini-game collection that the Rabbids normally did. This was a XCOM type tactical shooter, which I don't know who at Ubisoft decided like, yes, there needs to be a kid version of the XCOM tactical shooters that are super easy and accessible to younger children. But it's a good thing they did, because this game actually rocked. By the time we got to the actual reveal, Ubisoft was very obviously very confident in this title, and I don't blame them in the slightest. This game looked fantastic at E3 when we finally saw it. The graphics are like particularly impressive because this is the first time we kind of saw like a more of an effort into HD Mario that wasn't new Super Mario Bros. Style. Super Mario 3D World was our other one that we had seen, but we were still kind of like new to HD Mario, and seeing more of it was already really cool. And the way that they combined like the wackiness and the weirdness of Rabbids and like whatever that means, I mean, there's this giant toilet here, with the world of Mario was actually pretty novel and like fun to see. It was like, oh, there's these goofy like real world objects put into the Mario world, and then that continued with the choice to make Grant Kirkhope the composer of this game. I'm personally a massive Banjo-Kazooie fan, so hearing that was like, oh my god, this is gonna be, at least I'm gonna have something awesome to listen to. And that's true. This game has a lot of fantastic music tracks, from the Peach's Castle theme, which it's always great hearing a classic like Nintendo track with a new rendition from a different composer. I think that's always super fun. But Grant Kirkhope got to do a lot of that in this game, along with Mid-Boss Mayhem is a track I hear all the time in YouTube videos or whatever. That's probably his like big thing from this game in particular that kind of shines. And then like goofy stuff like the opera singer that you can run into, where they have a whole opera number in this game for no reason. But that was like the big thing about this game, is it was just fun. It was goofy, it was wacky. It wasn't like ashamed to be Rabbids. It didn't put like too much Rabbid into it or too much Mario into it. it was a new, fun, like, amazing creative project that I'm really glad did as well as it did. I think part of its success is unfortunately owed to the fact that this was the, like, you know, fourth month of the Switch being on the market. So people still didn't have, like, a lot of things to pick up. People could still, like, think, like, yeah, I'm just gonna pick up every Mario game that comes out. So it didn't surprise me that this, like, sold well because it's here early so everybody can pick it up. Which is a shame because I think the game's merit was still being downplayed a lot because of the Rabbids name that was attached to it. And it also kind of, like, was meant to fill this RPG hole that was growing in Nintendo, where we got a Superstar Saga remake this year, but we didn't really get a lot of Mario RPG content past that, and then this, like, seemed like Nintendo was leaning to make this the solution to that. So this game, I think, caught a lot of flack for not really doing that as properly as they wanted it to. Maybe it made fun of Luigi a little bit too much, even though all of those games do that all the time. People were ready to hate this game, but regardless, I'm glad it did well, and I'm glad it exists. It's weird projects like this that is super exciting in the game industry in general, and I had a blast with it. Even if I'm not an XCOM person, I know because I never beat it, but I put enough time into it to the point that I can say, like, yeah, this is pretty good. Good job. So what do we have here? It was kind of funny once we knew the Switch was doing well. People very quickly were like, okay, what is Pokemon's presence going to be on this thing? We didn't know if the 3DS was fully dead yet. It would still take a poor, slow, painful death until 2019 about-ish. So I think there was a Pokemon Presents earlier the year in 2017, where they were kind of detailing everything that was going to happen for the year. And first we saw Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which was like, alright, I guess we're sticking with the 3DS for now. Cool, I guess, instead of a Switch version, which kind of disappointed some people. But along with that reveal, we got the reveal of Pokken Tournament DX, which, cool, I guess. The Wii U, of course, had a lot of, like, weirder titles because Nintendo didn't do, like, these big massive releases on it a lot of the time, where this was one of them, where this Pokemon fighting game that's honestly kind of a genius concept. Pokemon as a franchise has all of these, you know, memorable creatures. I think, talk to, like, most people, a lot of them have, like, different favorite Pokemons or favorite things. So why wouldn't you take a franchise, fighting games, that is known for having this wide variety of characters that you can play as, and throw Pokemon into it and show off all of the different things, and then also, you know, bring it to Switch, give it the second lease on life that most games that journey from that poor platform probably really want. So it was pretty, like, non-surprising that Pokken got a port here, and it got some cool new stuff. It got a new character called, that guy. I don't know, I can't think of his name. Bow Owl, if you will. I'm bad at this game. Every time I play Pokken, I kind of get lost because of the, like, 3D moveset versus the 2D moveset, because anytime you land a massive hit, you'll shift between the two planes. And my brain isn't really big enough for that, and, like, it's already barely big enough for, like, Mario. You think I can handle a fighting game? It was a bit of a waste for the first, like, big Pokemon game on the Switch, but I'm so glad it exists. This game is actually, like, I don't know how realistically popular it is, but I see it a lot at, like, arcades that feature fighting games. I see Pokken playable a lot of the time. So, obviously it has its audience. It got more DLC fighters as time went on, and it's a really cool release that just kind of exists, and it's easily playable because it's on a modern platform. So, good work. Try again, though, next time, Pokemon Company. We want something real next time. So here it is, our other Switch exclusive, non-Switch exclusive game release for the year. I think Nintendo was kind of trying to check a lot of boxes at once when going down the list of game releases, and one of them that was doing, like, surprisingly well on the 3DS was Fire Emblem at the time. So it wasn't really a massive surprise, but it's still really cool to see that Fire Emblem was getting the same treatment that Hyrule Warriors was getting, where we were going to get a full Dynasty Warriors game styled after the franchise that was blowing up at the time on the 3DS. That being said, where Hyrule Warriors was a game that prided itself on the celebration of all of Zelda, including like the most deep-cut characters, all of this weird stuff, Fire Emblem Warriors is the Fire Emblem game that does not represent all of Fire Emblem. This game has an obsession with the 3DS titles and Marth, and that's it. There was a severe lack of representation on launch, where it was filled out a little bit with the launch of DLC, but I think this ended up feeling more like a missed opportunity for a lot of hardcore Fire Emblem fans. That being said, this was my first Fire Emblem game, I guess, kind of, where I really enjoyed it. I really liked Hyrule Warriors. I still work on my 100% goal for Hyrule Warriors very frequently. So getting a Fire Emblem version where Hyrule Warriors was like, oh, it's old, it's on the 3DS/Wii U, I don't want to play that, I want to play the new one. This was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. It kind of got me to understand Fire Emblem, I guess, a little bit. But that was the other problem, where Zelda kind of integrated all of these mechanics that Zelda was known for, the bombs, the obnoxious special bosses that would appear. Fire Emblem kind of just added the weapon triangle, and that was it. Other than that, it was the Warriors experience. So I enjoyed it because I wanted to play a Warriors game. Do I think Fire Emblem fans enjoyed it for all of the Fire Emblem stuff in it? I don't know. I'm not a Fire Emblem fan. Oh well. So here it is, the big one. Super Mario Odyssey. Released just a week after Fire Emblem Warriors in the States, where that released on October 20th. This was October 27th, and this was an event. The wait for this game and the lead up to release kind of felt like a fulfillment of the prophecy, where when that trailer dropped back in October of 2017 for the Switch, and everybody got a glimpse at this new Mario game, everybody was kind of like, oh my god, please let this be an open game. I need this to be an open game. Which is really, interesting at the time, because people were sick of linear Mario. We just had Galaxy, Galaxy 2, 3D Land, and then 3D World. And all of those are fantastic games, but unfortunately, kind of right after everybody stopped playing 3D World and saying, man, this is a fantastic game, I think they all kind of collectively realized, man, we haven't gotten a game like Mario 64 in a really long time. Technically, Mario Sunshine 2... kind of debatable. I have mixed opinions on that. But overall, people were like, hey, we haven't gotten a game like that in a really long time. And instead of saying that, they kind of all said that 3D World sucks and it's never going to be anything like that. Luckily for 3D World, that got a little bit better in the future. But it did mean that, people just really, really wanted this new Mario experience to be something different. Something, just completely open. And allows them to kind of explore and find objectives at their own pace. So, when the Switch 2017, trailer came around, and it was very obvious that that's what this game was going to be, even just during the trailer, people were like, oh my god, is it going to be really like this? And then Nintendo came out and said, yeah, it's just a brand new thing. We're going to categorize these games, and they showed, 3D Land, 3D World, Galaxy games, all on this one side, and then 64 Sunshine, and now Super Mario Odyssey on the other. And just like that, this is the game to look forward to all year. And I think it was worth it. In addition to that, that trailer showed off such weird and new ideas, the city world and stuff like that, that it was immediately obvious that that Nintendo was bringing its A game for Mario Odyssey. And after E3, where we learned that you could throw a hat to possess things, it was a closed book. This game was the game to look forward to, and it was a weird game, was the fun thing. It wasn't trying to be some weird, I guess it was trying to be weird, but it wasn't trying to be safe or, appease to the classic Mario demographic as much as, something like 3D World, and people were saying that it was at the time. This game was throwing hats at real people and possessing them. It had tanks in it. It had all of these unique bosses, like these bunnies, the Brutals, this, fun plot about Bowser trying to marry Peach. The game even opens with just, yeah, Peach is kidnapped. It doesn't even go through the whole rigmarole. They know what this game is going to be, and it's a really special experience because of it. Now, Mario Odyssey is kind of starting to get that more criticized in the widespread industry. They're like, oh, this game was made for like a cinematic experience. It's a little bit harder to revisit just because of how much of it is like special and a bit of a spectacle to try and surprise you the first time you play it. But I don't think that really takes away from how amazing and special this game was. I don't feel the urge to replay it like I do with 64 Galaxy and 3D World, which are the games I probably replay the most out of the 3D Mario compendium. But Super Mario Odyssey was still a super special moment, and looking forward to it all year, and then finally getting it. Getting the vocal themes, Jump Up Superstar stuck in your head, and it's still used super consistently. Pauline made a comeback and is basically like the representation for this game, which is kind of weird because she's the Donkey Kong, whatever. But Pauline making a comeback, the song that plays at the very end of the game, I think is amazing. I do hold that song very close to myself because of the way the lyrics play with the idea of the player and the character. It's a fantastic game, and while it's a little bit lessened with the knowledge of the surprises it holds, I still think this is one of Nintendo's best outings, and it's no wonder why people have asked for Mario Odyssey 2 for so long, because of just how creative the ideas that are present in this game. I don't think we'll ever get an Odyssey 2. Maybe this is the worst aged part of this video. Probably not, but for now, this was fantastic, and for being our most recent full 3D Mario game that we've gotten, wow. And I think this was the game that also cemented 2017 as a year to be remembered. Nintendo was just firing on all cylinders. We got Zelda and this, both of which were like pinnacles in their franchises. We got Splatoon finally getting like full updates, support, thought. Everybody wanted to talk about Splatoon. We got a bunch of these weird side fun projects. 2017 was really special, and this game was what solidified it. And it's also what solidified the Switch as the household like name it is now. Everybody knew that the Switch was going to have these quality Nintendo experiences that you could enjoy. Thanks. Mario Odyssey, it's really cool. So where Mario Odyssey kind of felt like a cap to 2017 and like Nintendo's massive push, we also kind of got a fun little epilogue with 2 releases. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 being the first of those on December 1st. Xenoblade, this poor franchise, was kind of having like this weirdness where everybody knew it was great, but nobody was willing to buy it or play it. Of course, there was the big push to get it localized to the West, and eventually happened on the Wii with the first title, but that game was like GameStop exclusive, the physical copy, along with some weirdness to it. And then Xenoblade Chronicles X, the not sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles, was only released on the Wii U, and didn't really expand on the story of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in any way, so it still kind of felt like its own thing. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 being announced at the Switch showcase felt like a big deal because it was like Nintendo being like, no, we are committed to this franchise, we want to keep it going, even if like these last 2 attempts weren't quite as great as we hoped it would be. And then, in addition to that, it showed some like fun character design. We'll get there. And just like this fun, like overall, like, yeah, this is a new Xenoblade Chronicles directly numbered sequel, which was super interesting. And then throughout the year, Nintendo actually did a pretty good job of like kind of building intrigue for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where during E3, for example, they had the treehouse like smashed in between like popular segments of like a Mario Odyssey segment or a look at like some new game like Samus Returns. They kind of like forced people like, hey, this is Xenoblade Chronicles. They were showing off this cool combat, and that's how I got into it. I didn't know I was like really all that into experiencing a game that was mostly a bunch of cutscenes and then a bunch of game. But watching all of these trailers and kind of the build up to this game, and also knowing that it was a new release on this console that I owned, convinced me to pick it up. I got this on Christmas. It was a gift to me, but I asked to it, so I guess I didn't pick it up, or I asked for it. So I guess I didn't pick it up, but I really wanted to experience it. And the best advertising that actually happened was when I watched the first 3 chapters of the game's only cutscenes. And I was just so intrigued by the story that I was like, yeah, fine, I'll pick up this game. And I love Xenoblade Chronicles too. I think a lot of people who played it at the time really did. Again, the passing of time has kind of like led this poor game to be, more critiqued, more looked back on as a lot more flawed. And I don't disagree with a lot of those points. Again, the character design is just, there are examples that are baffling. Why would you ever draw that? And I don't think it would ever fly today. 2017 was already like now it's no, don't do that. So there are issues with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but when I look past all of that, there's an amazing story about like land and war and how that affects people, like the lack of land rather. It really was special to experience that in a video game for me the first time, and I hope other people experience that too. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is fantastic, and I'm really glad it exists. And I'm glad that this game sold well, because this would not be the last time we'd see Xenoblade Chronicles. In fact, we'd see a whole lot more Xenoblade. But until then, good work, number 2. I like Pyra more than Mithra. That's the only addition I have to that conversation. And to cap it all off, we're back here again. The final release of the year on December 7th, right after the Game Awards, was The Legend of Zelda DLC Pack 2, the Champions Ballad. And this was just like a fun way to end off the year, where the Master Trials kind of provided a reason to open Zelda again, or like something to do while you were still playing it. The Champions Ballad actually gave you a full reason to kind of revisit the game, and it wasn't just because of the motorcycle. I think the new cutscenes were actually kind of nice. They were just fun to provide more context. I don't remember any of the Zelda cutscenes in general, but it was still fun to have that extra context with those characters. And more importantly, we got a bunch of new shrines, and this fun Master Trial. I guess the first DLC pack was called Master Trial. This fun trial at the very beginning with the one-hit obliterator, that the game really felt like special, and like it had this weird like new stuff to explore and discover again. And I think this was a great way to cap off 2017, where you beat up this awesome brand new boss and you got a cool motorcycle for doing it. And Zelda is fantastic. And that's really how this 2017 felt in general. This year was finally where Nintendo was like looking up. We were done with the weird like kid-focused Wii U ads. We were done with like trying to be as anti-consumer as possible with these weird like policies that kept throwing on. Don't worry, that's still there. Nintendo has never stopped doing that kind of stuff. But for once, it didn't feel like Nintendo was shoving weird, stupid, dumb decisions in our face all the time. And it was obviously paying off. We were at the end of the year. The Switch was very clearly selling well. People wanted Switches. People knew what Switches were. There was no confusion about if this was a Wii extension. They did it. And 2017 was really special for that reason. All of these games, I think Odyssey and Breath of the Wild are obviously the ones that are probably the most timeless. They still top a lot of charts for best games of all time. But all of them together, I think, solidified a fantastic year together. And this is easily Nintendo's second strongest or strongest year, depending on who you ask. Personally, probably the second strongest, just because a year later kind of impressed me more. But until we get there, this was fantastic, and it'll be a while till we get there. So, next week, I'll be covering all of our 2018 discoveries on this console, and I'll hope to see you there. Last week, I covered hardware, if you missed that, so please check that out. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I don't know. Stop bitching about Breath of the Wild. It's still really good. Same with Odyssey. Same with Xenoblade 2. Same with Splatoon. Same with